was once unthinkable. Sydney and Brisbane fighting over the Aussie Rules Premiership flag. But it's happening in next weekend's Grand Final. So has the AFL finally conquered the NRL states?
Has got it. They feel like they've got 1 foot in the Grand Final.
The Brisbane Lions on their way to the MCG.
Brisbane just had unfinished business to attend to at the MCG.
Last night's game will go down as one of the great prelim finals.
Also heading south, the Swans.
They are through to the Grand Final and a shot at their 6th flag.
Securing their place in the granny in front of more than 44,000 fans.
Sydney were always going to win that one, in my opinion.
Meanwhile, their rival code semi-final was played out just 30 metres away and in front of just half that crowd.
And the celebrations can begin for the Sharks.
The AFL's big dance set to be a tango between two teams from league country.
The AFL would be absolutely over the moon about the two northern states playing in the grand final. I mean, it's a really hard market to break into, New South Wales, as is Queensland, because they're both rugby league dominated states.
The Swans and Lions shedding their Melbourne heritage to form a new identity and membership numbers that eclipse any club in the NRL.
Both competitions will continue to thrive, but at the moment I'd have to say the AFL, they're winning the war, I would say, at the moment. It's not over, but the NRL, they're about to put a team into Perth. There's a team in Melbourne, but really they're not a national competition at the moment, so they've still got a bit of work to do.
The real winner from this week's grand final might not just be Sydney or Brisbane, but the AFL itself.
Well, with us to explain what this all means is the unofficial Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Eddie McGuire. Eddie, it's good to see you. Can you even be excited about a grand final if Collingwood isn't involved?
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Eddie, lock it in. Eddie wants to phone a friend. You know, we're going to get onto this just for a second, but is this a bit devastating for the AFL faithful in Victoria?
No, because I'm obviously a very passionate Collingwood fan, and I love Collingwood, and the only team I hate is whoever Collingwood is playing next. Okay, so to be honest, I think most AFL fans, if their team's not playing, they just want the two best teams playing, I think.
Right. Well, look, Eddie's back on the line. Eddie, is it possible to even be excited for an AFL Grand Final if Collingwood isn't involved?
Well, it's not nearly as exciting for me, Sarah, that's for sure. But look, the great thing is it's fantastic. I mean, look, as a Collingwood supporter, and I'm sure Strawny next to you will tell you this, that Sydney versus Brisbane is a lot better than having Essendon versus Carlton, I can tell you. So it is going to be a great game. I mean, the first time these two teams, if you like, from the old days of South Melbourne and Fitzroy have played since 1899. And it's great. They're two fantastic teams. And when you look at it, there's a chance that we're going to have the Sydney Swans winning the AFL Grand Final and the Melbourne Storm winning the NRL Grand Final. And who would have thought that 20 years ago? So it's quite incredible to see how these two, great codes have actually just become national codes in the last 20-odd years.
I was just saying, if your team's not playing, most AFL fans just want the two best teams to play. Do you think it's been a crazy year this year? Obviously, do you think Brisbane and Sydney are the two best teams?
Well, they are. I mean, look, you have a look at the Sydney Swans, of course. They finished on top of the ladder at the end of the home and away season. They've had a fantastic final series. So they come to town with the best preparation you can possibly have through the fixture. And then you've got the Brisbane Lions, who had such a horrible start to the year with injuries. Even the draw, if you like. Of course, the heartbreak of losing to the Pies last year by less than a goal. And then they've been able to turn it around. And Chris Fagan, their coach, who's been under so much pressure, is almost the story of the season. So many stories on both sides of the account here. And, look, it's going to be unbelievable. The crowds at the MCG for the finals this year have been 98,000, 94,000, and there'll be 100,000 again for two teams coming down from Brisbane and Sydney. Of course, as I said, their antecedents in Fitzroy and South Melbourne, the Bloods and the old Gorillas. Now it's the Swannies and the Lions. So it's fantastic history. And now there'll be this next chapter written on the weekend. It's what football's all about. the mighty MCG will be packed to the gunnels, and it'll be fantastic, and probably the biggest television audience in the history of AFL. So something to look forward to for everyone. It would have been better, of course, if Collingwood was there.
Well, AFL has been so traditionally thought of as a Victorian sport. As Corder says, it's really hard to break into places like New South Wales and those really hardcore league states. With this grand final, do you think this is truly now becoming a national sport?
Look, I know this comes up all the time, but a quick history lesson. The AFL came into existence in 1990, Collingwood Premiership year, by the way. But in that first 10 years, there were 4 non-Victorian teams who won the grand final. You know, the Brisbane Lions won 2001 to 2003, 2002, 2003. Port Adelaide, Sydney, West Coast Eagles in the 2000s. And, of course, the Swans have won it in this last decade. So I think that's all gone. I think that's a bit more media beat-up. As I said, it's more concerning when you have got a traditional love for a side against who you're playing. You're not worried where they necessarily come from. And for those who have watched this happen, I mean, we saw the Sydney Swans as South Melbourne basically die. We saw Fitzroy basically die. We saw them as the Sydney Swans and the Brisbane Lions and the Brisbane Bears running around and almost go out of existence. A couple of times they were bankrupted. And to see what they've been able to become as super franchise, I hate using the franchise word, super clubs in the national competition of the AFL, and now the 2 best teams of 2024 is absolutely sensational. So I send my complete commendation and best wishes to everybody involved in the 2 teams who have built it to this stage. It's going to be a massive, massive grand final on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, but Eddie, who are you backing, Sydney or Brisbane?
I couldn't care less.
There we go.
Sounds like me.
I will be absolutely barracking for the Collingwood representative in the sprint at half-time. That's about it. But no, look, to be perfectly honest, I mean, Chris Fagan has been absolutely sensational. And my old mate Greg Swan, the CEO, was with me when I started at Collingwood. On the other side of things, you know, James Rowbottom, who plays for the Sydney Swans, actually came to the grand final celebrations in 2018 as a mate of my son, who's a mad Collingwood supporter, played footy with him. And, of course, Brodie Grundy, the thinking person's football hero and crumpet, is a superstar. And with McInerney out for the Brisbane Lions, he could well be the Grundy production that comes up with a Norm Smith medal and possibly a premiership. So I love Brodie. He's a superstar, and it's just there's stories being written everywhere. It's going to be fantastic.
All right, Eddie McGuire, great chatting. Thank you.
Good on you, guys.